Hey everybody, Dusty here, back with the Wrestling Empire. Now, the last time I played, I chronicled the career of the Dust as he attempted to find his footing within the wrestling landscape, but I'll be honest, after a few months off, I didn't feel like jumping back in cold, so allow me to introduce you all to Big Nasty instead. Now, Big Nasty is Wrestling School's newest prospect, and he's named as such because he's 6 feet, 8 inches, and 284 pounds, a Big Nasty.
And you can't teach that!
While he has yet to put it all together, obviously, the potential is obvious, so there's a lot of buzz around him before he even starts. In fact, the fresh-faced 20-year-old is so eager when he shows up for his first day, he can't help but to put in some work in the gym, although this would lead him to discover one of Wrestling Empire's most common vices as he quickly takes a liking to shooting up water to stay hydrated. After wrapping up, it was time for his debut, and shockingly his opponent wasn't a giant dickhead, as he'd find himself squaring off against the very personable Roland Wiener. And although Mr. Wiener certainly has the right attitude, somebody did him an extreme disservice sending him out as he's clearly not close to being 100%. But Big Nasty had no intentions of making a poor first impression and quickly demonstrated a physical, hard-hitting style, although there were also flashes of the surprising agility that made him such an intriguing prospect. He ends up putting Wiener down for the count in a little over a minute to claim his first victory, and despite some playful taunting afterwards, Roland exhibited tremendous sportsmanship and let Big Nasty know that there were no hard feelings.
You son of a bitch.
After a little post-match recovery, it was back to the gym for some more games, although after suffering a nasty fall off the wall, he decided to call it a night. Over the next few weeks, Big Nasty continued to put in the work and hone his craft. While the athleticism and potential were obvious, there were definitely a few kinks to be worked out, as his inexperience would occasionally shine through, so at times he was a risk not only to others but himself as well. Still, the upside was too great to be ignored, and his work ethic was unquestionable. Of course, what happens once the bell's been rung is only a small part of the wrestling business, so during his time at wrestling school, he'd also get some chances to cut a few promos and refine his shit-talking skills, which is absolutely essential if you plan on doing anything in the wrestling business. Perhaps even more importantly, he also got some much-needed experience learning how to navigate and deal with all the volatile personalities and inflated egos that occupy a wrestling locker room, and seeing firsthand just how wrestling promoters have no qualms about running their talent into the dirt if it helps to fill their own pockets. Ultimately, though, Big Nasty's time at wrestling school would only last a few weeks, as his efforts had gained the attention of Monaco, the owner of All American Wrestling. During negotiations, Big Nasty would flaunt conventional wisdom and actually negotiate a smaller salary in order to retain control over his character, as he'd heard a few horror stories regarding Monaco's booking. Now, Big Nasty doesn't exactly receive the warmest reception from the women's champion, Gruesome Sharon, and he also quickly discovers that he was right to be wary of Monaco, as after introducing himself to his new audience with a fiery promo about his desire to claim championship gold, he'd find himself facing off against the wily veteran Mr. Benjamins in a sumo contest, so this wasn't exactly what Coach Emerson had trained him for. Plus, as to be expected, the competition at All American Wrestling was stiffer than it had been back at wrestling school, and to make matters worse, this was practically a handicap match considering the constant interference by Mr. Benjamin's right-hand man Papercut. Still, the one thing he learned back at school was how to be resilient, so Big Nasty kept fighting and looking for an opening, and eventually he'd find it and managed to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. Unfortunately, though, it did little to impress his fellow wrestlers, and even Lance Monaco seemed to have some early buyer's remorse, as he informed Big Nasty that he wasn't popular enough for the big leagues and threatened to send him back down to school if he didn't make some much-needed changes. Now, on the upside, his next match at the pay-per-view would offer him the opportunity to get a measure of revenge against Sharon's bitch ass. On the downside, though, it'd be in a barbed wire match because Lance Monaco is a lunatic who somehow thinks that this is appropriate for a man who's only wrestled 5 matches up to this point, but Big Nasty wasn't one to back down from a challenge. But while his fast start might have led him to believe that he was on his way to an easy victory, as much as he hated to admit it, the truth was that Sharon would end up being his toughest opponent yet. I mean, at one point she spends literally half a minute attempting to drive his head through the mat, and it just seemed like she had his entire moveset well scouted. Eventually, though, Big Nasty would find a way to connect with his patented lariat, aka the Big Nasty, and escape with a win, but he'd certainly know that he'd been in a wrestling match the next morning. Now in his third bout, Big Nasty finally found himself in a standard wrestling contest against Shawshot, who vowed to bring an end to the Nasty One's undefeated streak and be the 1-7-1. Now, this matchup might not have been able to match the sheer spectacle of his encounter with Gruesome Sharon, because, I mean, how could it really even hope to? But in terms of pure wrestling, it might have been Big Nasty's best match yet. It was a back-and-forth contest that blended together classic technical mat-based wrestling with high-flying athleticism, and there were numerous times during the encounter where it looked like either man might be able to walk away with the victory. However, in the end, Mike Shawshot's prediction would not come true as Big Nasty was able to secure win number 8. Backstage, Miss Match approaches Big Nasty and lets him know she was sorry to see him get put through a table, and while that might not have been exactly how things had went down, Big Nasty still appreciated the sentiment and offered to take Miss Match on as a manager, which she happily accepted. Now, this wasn't able to stop some of the boys from playing a prank where they stole his clothes and forced him to buy them back, but Big Nasty wasn't going to hold her responsible for that. Inside the ring, the new pairing would prove to be far more effective as Miss Match oversaw Big Nasty's quick victory over Persian Thug, which secured Big Nasty's job for the moment, although this victory would have far-reaching, unforeseen consequences. See, the next week, following a quick backstage beatdown on Gruesome Sharon, who was still out for blood, Big Nasty would head to the ring to cut a promo. However, before he was able to start, Lance Monaco's music hit, and the boss man let Big Nasty know he didn't appreciate just what he'd done to his good friend Persian Thug. Now, Big Nasty wasn't sure why he was so upset. I mean, aside from having lost, Persian Thug was perfectly fine.
The fuck is he talking about?
But Big Nasty never needed much of an excuse to dole out an ass whooping, so he had no problem accepting Monaco's challenge. With some help from Miss Match, Big Nasty predictably starts off in total control, and Monaco's decision to bring an explosive with him literally blows up in his face. Even some backup from the United States champion Judgment Dave isn't enough to turn the tides. However, just as Big Nasty was looking to put an end to this and got in position for a superplex, Monaco was able to push him off the turnbuckle, which damn near breaks his neck. Big Nasty puts up a valiant effort, but after Judgment Dave got involved again, he had to back down, and after receiving word that the Nasty One would be out of action for the next 10 weeks, Monaco makes it clear that this was no accident. Then the two-faced bastard immediately turns around and demands that Big Nasty still work despite his injuries, and considering that being sent back down to wrestling school to train for no pay while his medical bills would be stacking up didn't sound all that appealing, Big Nasty was forced to acquiesce. Now, Monaco was clearly looking to finish what he started as he immediately put our hero in a steel cage match, and while Big Nasty had every intention to compete, he accidentally nodded off after the press conference for a little bit, which led him to miss call time. And if having your peers tell you how much you let down all the fans wasn't bad enough, Big Nasty's current condition also led him to shit himself when he wasn't able to make it to a bathroom in time. This was followed by a complete mental breakdown, although in his current state, he was mainly just a danger to himself. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that Big Nasty was at his lowest point. Following this, Lance Monaco would continue to display that he's a complete and utter psycho as he greets Big Nasty by assaulting him and then immediately offers to hook him up with some cheap surgery to cut his recovery time in half. Big Nasty does what's best for his career and accepts, but he's far from happy about having to swallow his pride and metaphorically join the Kiss My Ass Club. And even once he's managed to get away from Monaco for the time being, Big Nasty's poor luck continues as Miss Match decides that she wants his crutch for some reason, and when he turns her down, she essentially tells him to stick it up his ass and cuts ties with him.
What have I done?
After a quick trip to the bar that would actually prove to be quite profitable, Big Nasty attempted to mend fences with Miss Match, but she wasn't having any of it, so he'd be forced to face whatever challenges lay ahead on his own. Now, Big Nasty had no intention of just going in and rolling over for anybody, but I mean, realistically, his chances at coming out on top were slim to none. So instead, he was content to pick and choose his spots and just cause as much chaos as possible, and while this was an effective strategy for a short time, eventually what little luck he had ran out, and Big Nasty was honestly just lucky to escape the whole thing without incurring another serious injury. One good thing, though, was that being eliminated meant that the catch-as-catch-can rules no longer applied to him, which meant that he was free to beat the hell out of the other competitors with his crutch to his heart's content. And even after he had fully recovered from his neck injury a few weeks later, he still occasionally kept his crutch on him. I mean, considering Monaco's influence over the rest of the roster, it's never a bad idea to have a blunt object on hand. Speaking of Monaco's influence, though, he might not find himself having to worry about it for too much longer, as it was soon revealed that Monaco intended to have Big Nasty removed from the company and would be taking him to court over the matter. And of course, as soon as this news came out, Monaco decided to give Nasty a $100 bonus before undergoing one of his infamous mood swings, which leads him to start stomping the shit out of Big Nasty like 10 minutes later when the opportunity presents itself. So you know the Nasty One is just starting to think that leaving All-American Wrestling might not be the worst thing, and that's exactly what happens as Monaco wins the case and Big Nasty's contract is immediately terminated. Now, there was an argument to be made that Big Nasty could have used another run back in wrestling school. I mean, his skills had clearly diminished. Anytime it's considered an upset, when you pick up a win against somebody like Seabreeze, it's hard to argue that things are going great for you. But while on the subway, Big Nasty was convinced to plead his case to a higher court in an attempt to have the previous verdict overturned, as the opportunity to stick it to Monaco was just too tempting to turn down. And also, it didn't hurt to learn that Jessie Belle had her eyes on him, and he certainly wasn't mad about that. After making their arguments, the court would indeed rule in favor of Big Nasty this time, and he now found himself reinstated at All-American Wrestling with slightly better terms than before. $400 a week wasn't going to reset the wrestling market or anything like that, but the fact that was guaranteed whether Monaco decided to book him or not was pretty sweet. Still, Big Nasty knew that his position at All-American Wrestling would always be tenuous at best with a madman like Monaco in charge, and he knew he'd have to take matters into his own hands sooner or later.
I ain't through with you, not yet by a long shot.
What's up, people? Dusty here, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you didn't, then I have no clue why you'd still be hanging around by this point, but whatever, you do you. However, if you did enjoy it, then why not leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel? That way you can be kept up to date with all my latest content. Or don't let me tell you how to live your life. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. I'm out.